Here we are, Any Given Sunday Sports
Yeah,
Special. We back. I'm talking.
yes,
I'm happy. I got a smile on my face, even though
I
you guys
bet you
can't
do.
see it.
Got
Listen,
that W.
all is good in the world once again. Finally, at least for a week. Then I'll be
Nailing,
back to being
nailing
depressed again.
picks, nailing wins. I mean, my man on the other side of the screen here is feeling good.
I needed some good juju. So whatever it was, I had my wife. She killed a couple chickens for me. We did what we
All
had to
right.
do, man. Listen, we had to win. Let's get it. Let's get to this recap, fellas.
All right, let's start it off with the recap. We're going to start off with your game because that was the worst game of the week last week. It was the Powers going into now called Justin Frimmel as Dennis. 1-2, 1-2. The Powers, they pull it off. 99-72. I see you smiling over there. What do you want to say, Jesus?
Listen, you killed me, and rightfully so. You crushed me for my coaching decisions, right? Absolutely crushed me,
Mm-hmm.
and it was absolutely valid. Other than the Jeremy Langford thing, you had every single valid point to make, right? This week, I don't think I made any bad decisions as far
Nope.
as coaching. Jeremy Hill puts up 21 against the Denver Broncos, but nobody would have started Jeremy Hill against Denver in any league, no matter what. So,
Nope.
even if it would have been me versus Jeremy Hill, you're still putting me over Jeremy Hill in the lineup. So
Yep.
that's how bad of a matchup it was. So, yeah, I finally showed that, hey, for a week, I'm able to coach. Again, it's 1 week. It just so happened to be against my main man, Pots and Pans, Dennis. On the other side, Dennis just had a rough one. Think about it. Cam Newton's only puts up 12. C.J. Anderson only puts up 3. And if you remember, Anthony and I, week 1, we specifically said the 2 guys that he needs every single week is Cam Newton and C.J. Anderson. If they don't show up, that's when his team is in trouble. That's exactly what happened here. And one last thing, as happy as I am, the New York Powers have yet to still break 100 points for the season. So there's still a lot of work to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'll add on top of that. From a coaching standpoint, much better. I think they're finally turning around the ship. Again, 99 points is not the best, but on the flip side, whenever you score 72 points, I mean, I'm sorry, but you deserve to lose. I mean, it's one of those things where you just can't overcome. There was one shining star on his team, that's Doug Baldwin, which I was surprised put up that amount because you know me, I kill a lot of the guys on that Seahawks offense. But again, we'll see now that Russell Wilson's a little bit hurt. We'll see how Baldwin does next week. But yeah, this got to give my hat to the Powers. Anthony.
I think the Powers did a fantastic job. They pulled it out. They desperately needed this win, and it all worked through. I was a little bit surprised that with a third-string quarterback, they didn't put LeGarrette Blount in. I mean, of course they were going to run the ball, but that's 22 points left on the bench. And I think it's about time we start worrying about Randall Cobb. That's 3 weeks in a row without double figures. And I thought, hey, he was going to be a strong point of that offense, but it's something he has to figure out. But great job by the Powers.
Thank you. Let's get to the next one.
All right. Our next game that we had on the slot, we had Man Up Gurley, who at the time was 1-1, going into Tampa's Empire at 1-1. It was Man Up Gurley, and he manned up big time, 128 points versus Tampa's Empire, who puts up 104. I'm going to start this off with you, Anthony. What do you got to say about this matchup?
It was just a tough week for the Empire. It's not as if they did anything wrong. Their big guns all scored in double figures. It's just that Aaron Rodgers finally played like Aaron Rodgers, and that was a really big swing, especially with Andrew Luck really not showing up until late. It was a big score to get Hilton at the end of the game, and that really, brought the points up, but it just wasn't enough to save him. For Pops, you got to give credit. He had his guns out there, and they all fired away. I didn't expect 16 from Coby Fleener. I always mess up his name, but all around good job. The Empire is going to come back strong. They have Evans, they have Cooper, they have Bryant. Lacey finally got in the gear. He didn't get the end zone, but 10 points, 100 yards, can't really fault with that. But like I said, if you got Aaron Rodgers, just like with his son having Cam Newton, once you have that guy, it cures a whole lot of ills, and it saved them this week, and it did just enough for them to win. Great job.
I'm going to step in, Jesus. I mean, look, this was a great, phenomenal job by Pops. Pops came out and lit it up with Aaron Rodgers, lit it up with Fleener and Ingram. It came at the end and won it. Ezekiel and Allen Robinson coming back to normal form. My big problem, though, is I showed, and I will admit this, I showed cockiness in coaching because, I came here thinking that the Colts would definitely score a lot of points, and I was wrong. I mean, they were struggling. And then the biggest miss on the Empire side is the fact that the Vikings, even coming off that big win the week before, they go into, and they did it to a good offense, mind you, Green Bay, and then you get a Carolina. I mean, at that point, they're a good defense, and I'll say today that most likely the Empire will roll with the Vikings week in and week out going forward. That mistake will not happen anymore because 26 points right there, right? So that's 13 extra points. Again, 117 to 128. Empire don't win it, and I'm not saying that things would change, but it's a different conversation we have. You know what I mean? It's one of those like, okay, they put up good points, but they lost to the better team that week. To me, this is more, this is a flaw in the coaching, which we never say about the Empire. That's really all I got to say. I'm going to kick it to you, Jesus.
So, Steve, I think first and foremost, you're being way too hard on yourself. I wouldn't have played Minnesota defense. As great as they've been, I would have wanted to see it a second week in a row against another top flight quarterback. So you did nothing wrong there. Baltimore against Jacksonville, you got 13 points. Anybody gets 13 points from their defense, you're damn happy for that. You're ecstatic. So coaching-wise, Steve, I have no issues with anything that you've done on your lineup. Where I do have a problem with your team, I have issues where I'm almost about to hit panic mode. Number one is you want to get a backup to Andrew Luck. The man is getting beat up, and there is a very strong possibility that he may not make it through the full season. So you need to start looking for that backup yesterday. Secondly, Eddie Lacy, as great of a game as he had, as it looked like he had, he still only put up 10 points. I'm concerned there. Dez Bryant, as great as of a player he is, without Tony Romo, he's human. He's not that special. And I think it's almost time maybe Jimmy Graham starts getting a look also. So a couple of issues there. Demaryius Thomas can easily play for you, which is good. I think Demaryius Thomas, talent-wise, is right there with Dez Bryant if Dez Bryant doesn't have Romo. Now, if Dez Bryant has Romo, they're not even in the same stratosphere. But because of that, they're kind of in the same level. But real quick, let me give Pops his credit. Pops has a monster team, and I think it's almost time for Pops to start saying maybe he has to play Marvin Jones every single week. I think it may be that time where Marvin Jones starts playing every single week for him. And he asked for Todd Gurley to man up. I think Todd Gurley manned up. And credit to Steve. Last week, Steve did say that he would buy Gurley low. He called it last week. Let's see if it continues because for 1 week, Gurley was back to himself. But Steve, I'm a bit concerned. You don't really have a true backup running back. Your backup to Lacy is Ryan Matthews, who's dealing with injuries. If I'm not mistaken, I think he had like -5 yards or something like that.
Yeah, he did not look good.
Yeah, so you concern me there. The Colts, I think that you need to make moves. And you saying that you're going to go ahead and just roll with Minnesota the rest of the way sounds great, but you're now doing something that is not what Steve does. Steve is a streaming defense type of head coach. You're changing the way you do things. I don't know if that's the smartest move for you to do. I think you stick to what's always worked for you, and maybe you dangle that Minnesota defense out there and you help facilitate a trade for yourself. I don't think you sticking to one defense is something that's ever been conducive for you. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just my opinion. I don't think because you wanted to, you start changing what you've always done and what's always worked for you.
All right, well, we're going to go to the next game. All right, the next game we had a slightly punty vibe, who was 1-1 at the time, and then the Dream Killers also 1-1. This was a blowout. I think all of us may have called it except for the man across from
That's me. Yep.
Wearing the Knicks hat. I mean, 104 to 89. Anthony goes big. I'm going to start it off with Anthony. I want to get his thoughts. What do you think about the game, sir?
I mean, there's not much you can say. I felt confident from the very beginning, even though I didn't get much from Carlson Palmer. But I think right now, David Johnson is pretty much matchup proof. He's in there every week. He's a double digit monster every week. Jordy Nelson looked a lot healthier. His speed seems to be there. He really showed up. And having DeMarco Murray really, really helps because I don't know what's going on with that Tennessee offense. The Tennessee offense is him. And, he's done a great job. I mean, I was flip-flopping between Forte and McCoy, but it all worked out in the end. On the opposite side, again, we spoke about it before. I'm really worried about Russell Wilson's health. Now he has a sprained MCL. For a guy who's a mobile quarterback with a weak line, that can't be great. I'm not even know he's going to play this week. It might be Trevon Boykinstein. Who knows? Again, another week without Le'Veon Bell is really going to hurt him, but DeAngelo Williams did show up in the first couple of weeks. It was a really hard game for him. And that suck fest that Ryan Fitzpatrick had that just destroyed Brandon Marshall. And I think just overall, I felt they had a better team. We played better overall, even with the weakness at quarterback. And I said the win was going to happen, and it's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, man. This was a great effort. Besides the quarterback, and if your quarterback shows up, and I mean, even if you you left 83 points on the bench. That's a good sign. That's a good sign when you can still score 100 points and somehow get 83 points. That just tells me that this team is extremely, extremely healthy and is a viable team for that playoff spot and is a contender for possibly the winner of that division. On the flip side, if I'm the Dream Killers, I'm almost I kind of with you on this, Jesus. I think maybe you start thinking about panicking a little bit, along with the Empire, because you score 89 points, and I mean your quarterback is not doing great now. He's questionable. You have DeAngelo Williams. All right, you have Le'Veon Bell, so that's a swap out. But the rest of the guys, Marshall was hurt going into this week. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders is not going to score 23 points every time. I'm concerned. I'm genuinely concerned. Jesus.
All right. Well, first and foremost, I stick to what I said. I told you guys Carson Palmer was going to struggle last week. He struggled. Told you guys DeAndre Hopkins was going to struggle. He struggled.
You did.
I told you Jordan Reed was going to struggle. He struggled too. What ended up happening here is very simple. Just before game time, 11:30, Lewis comes out. Delaney Walker announced that he's out. Then he has Rashad Jennings announces that he's out. Charles Sims steps up, does his job, does a great job. All of a sudden, DeAngelo Williams forgot, and the Pittsburgh Steelers forgot how to play football for a week. I mean, and maybe it's time. I think we all disrespect the Philadelphia Eagles defense. I think maybe it's time we start to say that's a pretty legitimate defense. I'm almost at that point where I'm very close to saying that maybe they're just a good defense, and it's not that that they just got lucky. Brandon Marshall. I mean, Fitzpatrick was throwing to everybody but the Jets throughout the whole game. So I mean, it was a tough game, but I think this game was going exactly the way that I said it would. It's just Lewis had nothing from DeAngelo Williams. I had a feeling that Russell Wilson. I never disagree with you guys that Russell Wilson was going to struggle because I'm in agreement with you guys. You never know what Russell Wilson you're going to get from week to week. So I completely agree with you. But when he lost Delaney Walker and he lost Rashad Jennings, that was crucial. That was crucial, those two losses. And step up Charles Sims, who did an amazing job for him. Brandon Marshall doesn't show up for him. DeAngelo doesn't show up. I mean, you're going to lose. There's just nothing you can do. The funny part is had Lewis played Dennis, he would have won that game. So that just goes to show the way this league is going. On the other side, Anthony, you have nothing to worry about. It's 1 week. When we get to our picks, however, I am going to ask you a very serious question that you're going to have some decisions to make about your lineup. But we'll get to that. One last thing, Steve and Lewis should be on the phone with each other yesterday trying to work out a trade because Lewis has what Steve needs. Steve has what Lewis needs. They have what each other needs. There should be a trade in the works for those two teams. Let's go.
All right. We're going to go into the game of the week. Game of the week, we had McPoon Handler Goat Engines, who was 2-0. Going into wrecked by my Rolls Royce at the time was 1-1. And look, I mean, Dom pulled it off. It wasn't the prettiest of games. 89-68. They pulled it off. They get to 2 wins. Jesus, I'm going to start off with you this time, man. I mean, what do you got to say about this game?
This was an ugly game. I think Rich, we gave him so much credit. I think we may have jumped the gun a little bit with him. It's not that he has a bad team, because he really doesn't have a bad team.
Mm-hmm.
But we jumped on that Kelvin Benjamin train very, very quickly. I'm curious to see how he does when he's not playing Minnesota defense. Let's see if he's able to bounce back. Latavius Murray, while the guy is scoring touchdowns, I want everybody to look at his week-to-week numbers. His carries are getting less and less each week. He's soon to be supplanted by this other guy in Oakland by the name of Washington. Look out for that. I'm not saying I'm panicked with Rich's team, but Rich has not made great coaching decisions here. I mean, you look at the bench. I would have played Big Ben, so I'm not going to knock him on that one. I told you guys about Julio and Anthony. You kind of sideswipe what I said last week about Julio and that he always performs no matter what. Well, this is the Julio that I try to tell people about every so often. Yes, he is a receiver that will put up good numbers, but he disappears every so often. And that's why I get angry when people put him at the same level of an Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham. Because even when those guys have bad games, they still do something for you. They don't put up a 1-point game for you. This is my problem that's always been. Eric Decker, the same thing I said with Brandon Marshall. It's not his fault. It's his quarterback's fault. So there was really nothing on the other side. Dom, I mean, 2 guys gave you good games. That's Christine Michael and Drew Brees. That is it. There is nothing else. I'm not going to give you too much credit, Dom, because you didn't really do much in this game. And I'm not being disrespectful. I'm not trying to make headlines for our matchup next week. But the fact is you didn't deserve this game either.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go next, Anthony. I agree. This was just a bad game all around, and it showed a lot of. I thought honestly, Rich had a flawless team, and now looking at it, I mean, again, it's kind of like you said, Monday morning quarterback, where you look at scores and you're like, but the reality is the truth, because we weren't expecting nothing games, and that's the thing I think we want to stress the most. It's not the fact that a guy will do 15, 17 on average and then put up a 6 ball or put up an 8 ball. You know what I mean? Like, that happens. It's still not a bad game. Even if he only put up 5 or 6, we still would be like, okay, obviously that's not great or good, but it's not atrocious either.
No.
When you're coming away from a game where literally Julio Jones, Benjamin, and you pick Decker, walk away with 4 points between the 3.
That's bad.
I mean, that's bad. That is bad. And that's the stuff that kind of concerns, especially me, for a Rich, because I'm hoping it's an anomaly. I'm hoping a week from now, when we come around and we talk about next week's matchups and the recap, I'm like, week 3 was a fluke. It was a fluke. I'm throwing it away. But for right now, I mean, from what I see, this is tough. And to Dom, Dom, you did enough to win. You got the win. Congratulations. But, I also agree. You got to do something with the bench, man, because that bench is it is awful. It is awful. Anthony, you're up.
It's an understatement about that bench. What Watkins, Rawls, Eifert, Moncrief, Coleman, they're all out. And as of right now, I don't know when they'll be back. And they're just kind of lingering there. I don't know what kind of moves he can make. And for Rich, it was just an anomaly. We're speaking about Julio Jones before, him getting 1 point. On Dom's side, Drew Brees gets 31. And of that 31, Brandon Cooks is responsible for 1. Anomalies happen. For a guy to score that much and his top wide receiver only gets 1 point, it just happens. But for Rich, like I said, he didn't start Tevin Coleman. I wouldn't have either. But he scored 26. Devonta Freeman scored well also. So between those 2 guys, they had 52. You can only start 1. And that was where the scoring came from. It wasn't Julio Jones' fault. No, we have other weapons, and they use those weapons explicitly. You're not going to get a Julio, Decker, Benjamin 4-point week every week. That's just not going to happen. It's just one of those things that happen. It was a little bit of a struggle. Like I said, Roethlisberger gets Bell back. That's a big improvement. He helps in the passing game and the running game. Makes life a lot easier for everybody. Things will get back to normal. I just want to chalk this off as an anomaly. I think that no fault to Dom, that his guys did what they need to do just to get by, but there's some problems there that need to be fixed. Again, it's a lot of guys injured. and he's going to need a lot of help. It's come down to who you're going to get rid of, because I mean, guys can't stay on the OR forever, and they got to go. Have to get better. The only thing that is helping him is like just with anybody. If we have a top flight QB, it just makes all the difference in the world. And him having Drew Brees saved him this week, next week, we'll see.
You're exactly right. All right, gentlemen, we're going to go into next week's games, week 4. We're going to start it off with the Dream Killers at 1-2. They're going into Man Up Gurley, who is 2-1. Projections right now is 94-92 going to Man Up Gurley. However, the spread is 8.5 points in favor of Man Up Gurley. So everything is going Gurley's way. I'm going to turn it over to you, Anthony. Who do you have in this matchup and why?
Is he there?
Yeah. I'm sorry, that spread just kind of blew my mind. I apologize.
I just thought the same thing. That's a big. Can I take the points on that? I'm just saying. Can I take the points?
Yeah. Give me Pops. I'm sorry. I'm looking at things, and again, it comes down to quarterback. If Russell Wilson does not play, and as of right now, I don't see a backup quarterback in his bench, so he has to pick up somebody. Stafford against Chicago
He traded for Eli Manning.
For Eli? Oh, good for him. And they played the Vikings. Fantastic. It's not going to help. Having Stafford against Chicago is fantastic. Elliott against San Fran, fantastic. Marvin Jones, fantastic. Alshon Jeffrey, fantastic. I'm not certain about Travis Benjamin, but, we'll see. But, getting Le'Veon Bell back will help to a degree. But not having that quarterback where a fair amount of his points are going to come from and still not knowing what's going on with Delaney Walker, I got to take Pops in this week. I mean, no offense to Lewis, but he just has a better team this week, and he has to clean up that quarterback matchup ASAP.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm also going to take Pops. It's really a multitude of things with the Dream Killers. The quarterback being hurt is also a problem, and I don't like that Eli matchup for a backup. Le'Veon Bell coming off suspension. He's got to find his legs, and I mean, Le'Veon Bell's a superstar, and I'm not saying he's going to score, 2 points or anything like that, but I also feel he's not going to have like that D'Angelo Williams factor either. You have Delaney Walker, who's questionable and it looks like he may be out. You have Doug Martin, who's on his bed. I mean, he just has so many injuries on the other side. And then, the only bright shining star that I can see is Emmanuel Sanders versus Tampa Bay. That could blow up. But with Charles Sims, it's not going to matter because that's a downside because I think Denver is going to completely stop the Bucs. On the other side, I agree with you, Anthony. Matthew Stafford against Chicago is great. Allen Robinson against Indy, fantastic. Marvin Jones, we just talked about him. I mean, it seems like you can't sit that guy. I mean, it's just so heavily in Pop's favor. I get the spread actually, and I probably would bet it with the spread. I'm taking Man Up. Jesus.
I'm with you. I'm taking Man Up. Pops, I don't have to say much. He has a really good team. The one thing I don't like that Pops is doing is he still believes in Alshon Jeffrey without Jay Cutler, and he's leaving Mark Ingram against San Diego on the bench. I do not agree with that. By no means. I just do not. I'm okay with him benching Gurley against an angry Arizona team. Completely understandable with that. This is Jeff Fisher. He doesn't win more than 2 games in a row. That's how he is. He's a 500 coach. That's what he does. So I'm okay with that. But Mark Ingram should be in the lineup. On the other side, Lewis, my main man's pots and pans. Hear me out on this, all right? Charles Sims needs to be on your bench. He should be on your bench. And please put in either Golden Tate or Jeremy Maclin. Heck, put them both in. Bench Brandon Marshall, who's playing injured right now. The guy is hobbled on the field.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I get it. He is the Terminator. He can go through any kind of injury. But if you put in Golden Tate there, defenses are watching film. They're going to see that Marvin Jones is the guy that's hurting them. They're going to make that adjustment, which means now that's going to open it up for Golden Tate underneath. And what you then do is you take away a target from Pops because every time Matthew Stafford throws to Golden Tate, you take away those points from Pops. Then on top of that, Macklin going against Pittsburgh is a good matchup because let's face it, they don't have anybody else to throw the ball to out there in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me, Pittsburgh's going to be angry. So Pittsburgh's going to score a lot of points. They're going to have to pass the ball out there in Kansas City. Those are the things that I really want to see him do. If he makes those two adjustments, I think Lewis has a fair shot. But I have to go with what I'm seeing right now. And what I'm seeing right now is Pops is the better team. Give me Pops in this game.
All right, guys, that's the first game. We're going to go into our second game. We have Tampa's Empire 1-2 coming off 2 straight losses, going into McPoon Handler Goat Engines, who are 2-1. Projections have it 97-89, and the spread is also 7.3 points in favor of McPoon Handler Goat Engines. Gentlemen, I propose the same question to you again. Who do you have and why? Jesus, let's start it off with you first.
I'm reluctantly picking the Empire here because the Empire have way better matchups. Devontae Freeman against an angry Carolina defense. I don't like that. Julio Jones against an angry Carolina defense. I don't like that. Eric Decker against Seattle. I don't like that. So yeah, I don't know. I just don't like the matchups. On the other side, Andrew Luck against Jacksonville. I hope it doesn't rain. It's in London, the game, and every time in London, it always seems to rain. So hopefully it doesn't rain. TJ Yeldon at running back. That just makes me want to throw up, but whatever. It is what it is.
It's Indy. Come on, guys.
I get it, but it's still Yeldon. He's nothing. He has done nothing. And now they has Chris Ivory back. That hurts him. Amari Cooper's going to do great. Ebron should be fine, but maybe it's time for Jimmy Graham.
Yeah.
It may be time for Jimmy.
I knew that was coming.
I'm just saying it might be that time. So yeah, Steve, you're going to win this game. I think you're actually going to win it pretty handily because of the matchups on the other side. But Steve, I'm telling you right now, get yourself a backup running back and get yourself a quarterback. The quarterback you could probably pick up from free agency, but you need to trade for a backup running back because what you have right now going into this game, do not take that risk and take this game for granted. Nobody wants to be 1-3 going into the division games.
Nope. Yeah, I'm actually I'm on the fence on this one because just of how things have played, but I'm kind of with you. I'm almost like I kind of am picking myself. Only because Rich did so bad last week, and he has bad matchups. But honestly, I don't think it's going to be handedly. I think this is going to be really close. And the only reason why I'm picking myself is I agree with you. I think Amari Cooper is going to bounce back. And I'm also a big fan against Dez Bryant against that horrible San Fran defense. I think he could do something, at least a touchdown or two. The only weakness that I see is really, yes, you're probably right on the Yeldon pick, and Jimmy Graham could still make the lineup. I will say that, and I will also say Mike Evans is not a lock. I am doubting that heavily for Demaryius Thomas.
That's understandable.
On the flip side, I agree with you, man. It's really Devontae Freeman, Julio Jones playing Carolina. That's, I think, honestly, what hurts him at the end of the day. If he has any other matchup besides Carolina, I would pick McPoon. But this day I cannot. That's why I have myself. Anthony, who do you have?
I'm going with McPoon. Sorry, I am. I understand we talk about matchups and lineups and so on and so forth. It is a week-by-week game. Things happen. And I'm not really terrified of that Carolina defense. I mean, they have great linebackers, have K'Wan Short in the middle, but again, they're still starting 2 rookie cornerbacks against Julio Jones. And just going to be a stand for the guy. I like the guy. You might not have him in your top 3 or 5 Jesus, but I like the guy. I think after what happened last week, he really wants to show people I'm still me. Like, don't forget about Julio, and it's very important. Eric Decker is a bad matchup, but I think Kelsey showing up last week is really important. I think in the end, with Ben Roethlisberger and Kelsey, I think that really does make a difference because I think they get into a shootout. You can't really overrate the Kansas City defense because the pass rushers aren't there. But the thing is that they had 6 interceptions last week, but it was against a terrible quarterback. But they haven't faced Ben and Bell and Brown all together. And this is their first game, and I think they really want to show out. And you might have particular feelings about Latavius Murray, but he's like Sterling Sharp. All the guy does is score touchdowns every week. So you're guaranteed at least a minimum 6 or 7 points from him. Even though other guys are cutting into his time, he always finds a way to find the end zone. The Texans should really clean up against that Tennessee defense which is going to score a lot, which might balance out with the Vikings. But I think that one way or another, just after last week, Benjamin really shows up. He really steps it up this game, and I think that just might give him the edge over the Empire. So I'm going with McPoon. I'm not strong about it, but I'm going with McPoon. I want to go against the grain.
All right. We'll go into our next game. Another interesting game. We have Justin Frimmel, 1-2. That's Dennis's team going into a slightly punty vibe, who is 2-1. Projections right now have punty vibe 100-87, and it is a big line of 13 points in favor of a slightly punty vibe. Jesus, I'll start off with you, man. Who do you have in this one and why?
I don't think that I actually have this game like I had it as a draw, but obviously I can't pick a tie. So because I really like Cam Newton against Atlanta. I like C.J. Anderson against Tampa Bay. And everybody says Tampa Bay's run defense is really good. I didn't see it. I didn't see it last week.
Not against Todd Gurley.
Yeah, I saw Todd Gurley go nuts, so I really didn't see that. Yeah, I love the matchups, but on the other side, I love them even more. Unfortunately, Carson Palmer against the Rams. So is David Johnson. DeAndre Hopkins against Tennessee. Jordan Reed against Cleveland. I mean, it goes on and on. So I am going to go with a slightly punty vibe. However, a slightly punty vibe, if you can get yourself another receiver or another player, might I suggest, and you guys don't have to negotiate this on the show, but DeMarco Murray or LaShawn McCoy going to Steve sending one of his top receivers to Anthony. Don't discuss this right now. Let you guys ponder on it, but you guys both help each other in a sense. I'm just saying that is something that the both of you should strongly be thinking about. And after this week, regardless how Carson Palmer performs, there should be a quarterback controversy. You obviously don't play Jameis Winston, and this is where I told you, Anthony, I was going to mention something. You have a quarterback controversy on your hands, my friend. This week, it's easy because Winston goes against Denver. But after this week, my friend, you have a decision to make because Jameis Winston is saying he's ready to be your starting quarterback. He's ready to be the franchise. So you're going to have a decision to make. And good luck with that one. But give me Anthony.
Anthony, respond.
Well, look, I kept Winston for a reason. I want him to be the franchise quarterback. And he'll be in there eventually. But his upcoming – I would probably say probably after the bye. Because they have Denver this week, Carolina next week, then the bye. Okay. Then San Fran, then Oakland, then Atlanta, then Chicago. Then after that, it gets KC, Seattle. Okay. Seattle, sure. New Orleans, sure. Dallas, New Orleans, so he'll be in there. But I could not trust him after the week he had the week before. It completely fell apart. That doesn't mean I lost faith in him. I just didn't think it will be that great of a matchup for him. But one way or another, he'll be in there one way sometime, one of these weeks. Especially if Carson does what Carson does, it's not that much of a controversy. Something happened after that last game last season, and he just doesn't seem the same. Now, he did show up early, and I can't really blame it on the matchup. It just seems like, later in the game, he's taking a lot of risks, throwing a lot of interceptions. I get that. But, 22 the first week, 30 the first week, he stayed consistent. He did his job. But, yeah, I do worry about him, but I know I have a solid replacement with him. In regards to the matchup this week, I don't want to pick myself because I'm really afraid of Cam Newton putting up one of those, big 45-point games.
Yes.
That's terrifying. It saved me last year, so I'm very aware of that. But having Palmer and Johnson against LA, I'm not a Fisher stan at all. I don't really like him as a coach, and that defense is terrible. And I think after last week, they got a point to prove. They got their time. They'll get it together. I think DeAndre Hopkins steps it up. I think Jordan Reed steps it up against Cleveland. I actually like McCoy against New England. It might sound insane, but just the fact that it seems that they're really concentrated on running the ball and getting the ball to their best player, and he's their best guy. We'll see about DeMarco Murray, but again, it's the Cardinals defense against LA, so that should work out fine. C.J. Anderson's a really good matchup. So is Fitzgerald. Crabtree isn't bad. Doug Baldwin, especially with the quarterback situation, I'm really more afraid of Cam than anything else. He'll find a kicker, but who really cares about that? But for this week, I'm definitely going to take a slightly punchy vibe.
Yeah, I agree, gentlemen. I think it's just too much for Dennis's team to handle this week, and it's mainly because the Arizona Cardinals. I've just seen when really good teams, especially Super Bowl contending teams, come off an embarrassing loss like that, they come out next week with wanting something to prove. And LA being out there, having them come in, them thinking that they're high, coming off the win against the Bucks, I think they are going to let loose. And hey, I was wrong about this last week with the Colts. The Colts did end up winning, but I said that the Colts would go berserk. This is my team that I think is going to go berserk, and that's the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
I think it's just too much. I agree with you, gentlemen. I think Cam Newton is going to drop a 35-pointer. I do agree with that.
It's going to be close. It's going to be a close game.
It's going to be close. Yeah, it's the rest of his bench that I'm concerned about, but he's got Fitzgerald there who's going to keep him in the game, so it's going to be close. But I agree with you, gentlemen, a slightly punty vibe for this week. All right. And then lastly, the game of the week.
Really?
We have 2-1 wrecked by Rolls-Royce versus New York Powers, who's 1-2. Current spread, 98-103. That's the projections in favor of the Powers. Spread is a 4.9 favorite also to the Powers. I'm actually going to kick this off to you, Jesus, because I'm going to let you comment. Who you picking and why? Who do you got?
I don't like being the favorite in a game. That's when I lose. History has always shown it. When I'm the favorite, I lose games. But of course, I'm going to pick the New York Powers. And for Dom's well-being, he better hope that Rolls Royce doesn't get fixed, because after what Christine Michael just did, you don't want anybody else taking touches away from Christine Michael after that blow-up game that he had last week. So he better hope that doesn't happen. Look, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to this. My team is better than his team, right? But can Blake Bortles keep up with Drew Brees? He doesn't have to beat Drew Brees, but he has to keep it close. That's where the issue is. That's always the issue with the New York Powers, is that quarterback position. And I think in London, I'm hoping the weather doesn't rain. Please, Mother Nature, just cooperate with me. Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m., I will be getting up early to watch this game. I will believe that Blake Bortles will put up 20 plus and keep it close. On top of that, Drew Brees is not at home. Everybody knows he's a different quarterback when he's not at home. I know it's San Diego. I know the weather's nice, but once again, look at his numbers when he's not at home, whether it's indoors, whether it's outdoors, whether it's nice weather. It doesn't matter. When he's not at home, he's a completely different quarterback. So I'm going to go with the New York Powers in this case.
I'm going to go next, and I'm also going to say New York Powers, and it's really because of one thing. This is you know me, I love picking defenses. And if there is one thing that I know is that, and I watch this team on a regular, on a constant, and they're going to do it to me. And I'm going to get so upset. I quote, they will fumble twice and lose it, and they will throw a pick, return for a TD.
Pick six.
This is a 27, 25-point defense for my week. It's got bad written all over this. That alone right there is just hard to overcome. I think if it weren't for that, this may actually be a close game. I honestly think the difference maker is actually the defense, and it's going to score a lot of points. I drop the mic. I hand it off to Anthony.
You know what? Give me Rick my Rolls Royce.
Oh,
wow, with the upset.
Let me explain. Okay. We say that Drew Brees is not that great on the road. Okay, I understand that. I get that. But San Diego is his home. It's where he started. It's where the whole myth of Drew Brees began. Mm-hmm. Like, he knows that place. And it's against San Diego. It's not like they're going to throw anything new at. He knows that team. He knows that stadium. He knows those people. They'll probably be cheering for him more than they probably will be for Phillip Rivers. That wouldn't surprise me. Lamar Miller had 10 last week without getting a touchdown. He should be able to get that plus 6 more. He should get in the end zone this week against Tennessee. AJ Green only had 7 last week against Miami. It's a really weak team. They should really do a good job. Brandon Cooks, only 1 point. Should do a hell of a lot better this week especially with Drew Brees want to prove something against San Diego every single time he plays them because they never should have gotten rid of him. Now, we talked before about Kelvin Benjamin. Yes, he does matter. But if you're in trouble, you look for your safety valve. That's always going to be Greg Olsen. Now, you don't need a safety valve against Atlanta's defense. That's the last thing that you need. But Greg Olsen showed up last week. John Brown had 7 last week. He didn't get into the end zone, and he just getting over concussion. He's starting to look like himself. Christian Michael against that Jets defense, I am worried about that, absolutely. But if they have no other option, and if their quarterback's hurt, they want to control the ball. And they don't have any other backs besides Michael. So if he starts to go off, it's really going to be impressive. Same thing with Seattle's defense. You saw what the KC's defense did to Ryan Fitzpatrick last week. I wouldn't expect the best secondary to do any worse than what they did.
Six picks? You saying they're going to get 6 picks?
No, I say 3. I say 3.
You said not any worse. I'm like, wait a minute. Worse would be at least 6 picks.
Yeah, the way he's throwing the ball, it would not surprise me. He just it's like if you were playing darts blindfold, just kept throwing it wherever you guessed something might be. That's how Ryan Fitzpatrick was last week, and now he's up against the best secondary in the NFL with a hurt Brandon Marshall, which is going to limit all the other options.
Yeah.
Now, for the other side, I do like Melvin Gordon. I think he's healthy. He finally shows up. I think Antonio Brown gets into the end zone this week. I'm not certain about Odell Beckham. Again, we talked about that Minnesota defense. It's for real. They have 3 good wide receivers. One of them got to go. They're probably going to try to go after the big gun.
Yep.
I think Rob comes back healthy this week. He gets in the end zone against Buffalo. I love Jarvis Landry. I love that matchup against Cincinnati. As long as he's healthy, he's fine. My issue, and it's always been, I'm not a big Blake Bortles guy, and he hasn't shown up the first couple weeks. Now he's playing an early game across the seas in Indianapolis where there might be bad weather. Now, that's a frightening proposition.
But, Anthony, you skipped over the most important part, that Broncos D.
Yeah. But if even if they put up good points against Tampa Bay and the Jets aren't looking as explosive, it's not as if the Seahawks couldn't score. So say that the Broncos get 23 and the Seahawks get 17. 6 points is a wash. And with that advantage at quarterback over Blake Bortles,
he's saying the quarterback. I get it. I mean, look, you're not going to get a debate on me as far as the quarterback position. There's no debating on that. I understand you saying Drew Brees. He played in New Orleans. This is a completely different team. He hasn't been for New Orleans or played for New Orleans in quite a while, so he doesn't know that team. I disagree with that. But you're absolutely right that he's the better quarterback. So you would expect that. I agree with you. He will outscore Blake Bortles. The question is by how much will he outscore Blake Bortles by?
Good answer. Good choice.
All right, guys, that's our picks. We hope you guys enjoyed the show, and we'll see you guys next time.
Good luck, everybody. We out. Stay safe. Be safe. Peace.
Peace.